Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio. So we love our third Thursdays. We get to chat with Lea Brovedani. She is known as the Trust Architect. She's a speaker. She's a workshop facilitator. And she is known as one of the top thought leaders on trust by the organization called Trust Across America. She's also an author. Two of her books are Trust Me, Restore Belief and Confidence in an Uncertain World, and Trusted, Secret Lessons from an Inspired Leader. So for all of that, you can go to thetrustarchitect.biz, check out her articles and all kinds of good things on her website and learn about her workshops, her seminars, speaking, and all of that, and her books, obviously. You can also learn more if you go to blendradioandtv.com. We've got a lot of her articles and past podcasts on there. But Lea has also, if I use the word transition, that's pretty good for this, is transitioned into becoming what she says. She is a soul journey doula. She is an end-of-life doula. So today we're going to talk about the balance between trust and the necessary things about trust is huge to have a end-of-life doula in your life, at the end of your life. And we're going to talk about what is an end-of-life doula, because there are so many questions. Right before we started recording, Nancy's already asking, well, can I have the preacher? You know, can I have my priest? Can I have my bartender? Like, you know, all of those things at my end-of-life party. Nancy wants her bartender for rum and cokes before she goes. Yes. Sorry, I know that for a fact.
I want to on your way rum and coke.
Yeah, you know.
So I know what to tell them to put in your intravenous bag, you know?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. That's fun.
That's. I want to go into all the details of what an end-of-life doula is, but I want to know, you know, you've done work before you became the trust architect. Obviously, you're a mother, you're a wife, and you've done so many different careers in your life, but one main thing is emotional intelligence. I think that is going to be the foundation, and caring and commitment. Oh, we're going to the 5 tenets of trust, aren't we?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
trust gets into inconsistency. So you have to keep showing up for your person at the end of life. All of what makes, you know, a trust architect makes a soul journey doula. So tell us what, just a sentence or two, what an end-of-life doula is, and then why you decided to do that as a change.
Okay.
Because you're doing both.
Yeah,
you know?
actually I am. I'm transitioning as I help people transition. So
I know,
you know,
it's a good word.
A lot of it had to do with my previous work, and I kind of feel like there was a lot of things that lined up. I was with my dad at his end of life, and I was petrified, absolutely petrified. I'd never been around a person who was dying before. And this wasn't just a person that I was doing work with. This was my dad.
Yeah.
And it was actually quite beautiful. It was such a privilege to be with him. And see that, and we were really fortunate because it was a very peaceful transition. He took one big exhale and he was gone. And there was a charge in the room. It was this very spiritual energy. And if anyone knows me, I'm not like religious, but there was something in that room that was just so beautiful. So that there was that experience, and the experience of when my mother passed, I couldn't be with her because it was during COVID. I was living down in the United States. She lived up in Canada. And by the time I got the information, or my brother called and said, it's not going to be long, I wouldn't have been allowed to go up because of all the rules and regulations. So there was all kinds of things lined up, problems with my daughter. And I always did meditation. And I thought, I know that our relationship will heal, and I felt really confident, and it has. But what about those people who die with all of their regrets, or there's no one there to hold their hand? Who would be there to hold their hand? And I thought, there's the doula helps people come into the world and make sure that everything is arranged. And I wondered if there was a doula, the same kind of role. I didn't expect it to be called the same thing. I wondered if there was a doula for the end of life, to make sure that everything was arranged so that a person who was passing could have the best possible care and the best possible scene as they transitioned from living to dying. And so that kind of set me, and I went, that can't be a thing. I absolutely thought, well, this is crazy. And then I found out it's not. There's a whole field and it's growing. Now I see it all the time. It's like, now I had never heard of it before. And now I'm watching a television show and the protagonist's girlfriend is a death doula. And I'm thinking, holy crow, it's just becoming, I'm hearing it more and more and more.
Holy crow?
Oh
my gosh, I haven't
I'm trying
heard
to
that
clean up our language, Miss Lisa.
I know,
I
but
like
that
that.
was a Canadian.
Okay,
That's
was
not
like,
just Canadian. I
holy
haven't said that in
pelican.
years. Listen, I just interviewed a Canadian and she said at the end of the day, and I went, oh my gosh, we haven't heard that for a few months. Lee, get back on the show quick. But yeah, holy crow. I have not heard that for a long time, but
Holy crow.
don't do that. But it's that's the kind of thing, like, a close friend is pregnant, then everybody's pregnant. You go to the store, you're seeing pregnant people everywhere.
It's a new notice,
Yeah, you start noticing it. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a new notice, because there's so much to see wherever you go that you pick and choose what you want to see. Now it's like, oh, now you suddenly notice because you've been primed to notice.
And as far as the death doula, like, there's so many misconceptions. I have a cousin who had a health scare. And I said, well, you know what I do? Like, maybe we should have a conversation. And she got very terse and said, I'm not afraid of dying.
Oh.
And I went, well, that isn't really what I do. And so there's, like, I think that someone said, oh, you help people. Someone thought that I helped arrange all of the medical assistance in dying, the maid. So it helped arrange kind of the when people choose to die, if they've got a terminal illness. Well, no, but I can help find all of the information so a person can make that decision. But I don't encourage someone to do anything. But I can tell you that after I work with people, and I've done this with when I was going through my practicum, I talked to people, how afraid were they of dying before we went through the work that I did with them. And one of the women was at a 9, and after we went through the whole process, see, that's where you can hear the Canadian in me, the whole process, she was at a 3. She was no longer afraid. And a lot of, I think, of what we're afraid of is the unknown and not having everything arranged. But yeah, there's a lot of things, we make sure that the relationships, we can help heal some of the relationships. And for those relationships that can't be healed, perhaps help that person get the closure that they need so that they're in a peaceful place.
Well, this is a big deal with what you're talking about, because when we're born and then get through childhood and into adulthood, then midlife, it starts the fear, the real fear. We have a little bit of fear when we're a kid, like teenage, but when we start
teenagers
doing
business,
usually
fearless,
they're fearless. They're like, screw you.
They don't believe they can die,
and they know everything. We don't know anything, but then you get
brimstone has done damage.
Yeah, there is a fear of how you're living your life. Are you going to go to hell? Because like what Nancy's talking about, there's some of that, and that's a real thing, depending on your religious beliefs and spiritual beliefs, and everyone believes what they want to believe. This is not a place of you do what you believe in, as long as you don't hurt anybody. Don't bring that fire to someone, but you know what I mean. But it is about, everybody has beliefs, and things in life can slow you down. You could have a life that you were on a great track and then things happen to take it away. And now you're fearful you could die now and you didn't live your life. It's like, oh, did I screw up? Or maybe you really did screw up. Maybe you did something bad. Can you reclaim it? So I think there's this running line of fear that we all have as adults, and some bigger and some smaller, depending on our growth, our life. It's just the way it is. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to, nothing is, it's like looking at art, listening to music, reading a book. Everybody has their opinion according to themselves, their taste. Yeah, I may love an amazing rock song. Lee, you go, that sucks. And I'll look at you and go like, what's wrong with you, Lee? That doesn't make sense, right? Like Nancy says, Eric Burton is the best. I go, no, he's not. You know, I like this dude over here. And she'll go, yeah, he's all right, but not as good. It doesn't matter. That's a taste. And it's, everybody is entitled to be individualistic and be their own soul of who they are. But fear still is in there. And so I think that is a huge thing of what you do is now when it's getting closer, some people just kind of succumb to it and become numb. There's like a comfortably numb thing, like Pink Floyd, sorry, going back to music. Or are you going to embrace the next adventure? You know, because I'm fascinated. I don't want to go right now, but I can't wait to see what's on the other side. I'm excited. And if it's a dull thing, it's going to so suck.
So that Morrison song, Break On Through to the Other Side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we both agree that he was good? Like,
Jim Morrison?
Oh, yeah.
Hell yes. He is one of the best.
Yeah.
I didn't know if we could be friends. I just needed to put it
listen, come on. Jim Morrison, are you kidding me? I can quote just about everything. Don't even. And are we going to do Jim Morrison versus Eric Burton? I think they both held the stage well, but I think Jim Morrison.
They're almost the same.
Oh,
the same.
She's being kind.
Personality type.
He loves Jim Morrison though.
Yeah, I love both of them.
Okay. So what I would be able to do is I would work with you, and what are this, like what is the soundtrack that you want to listen to at the end of your life? So a death doula does all of the things.
This is the end.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because someone said, well, I don't need a death doula because I've got a directive, and that doesn't go as that.
What's a directive?
Yeah. So a lot of times people will put a directive together and they will say, here's what I want at the end of my life. It's not really a will. It goes a little bit further. So, there's the term do not resuscitate. Now there's a new term that I like a lot better, and it's it's allow natural death, because heck if I was in the water and people thought I had drowned and they were able to get the water out of my lungs, then I want them to resuscitate me. So I don't want to DNR.
Absolutely.
But I've seen people give chemotherapy to people who are in their 90s, and there is absolutely no hope. And so that would be allow natural death at a certain point. So there's everything from what is the death that you want. And as a death doula, I can't write the will, but I can make sure that the will, that I can find the person to do it for you. I can't administer the medicine, but I can find the nurse who can. So I can't do all of the pain medications, but I can find out what is it that you want. Because some people don't want to have too much medication because they want to be fully present. So you find out all the needs and you try and make sure that you're working with the family, because I've seen too many families who say, no, keep them alive at any cost.
Yeah.
And if I'm working with a person who says, no, I'm ready to go. I don't want to be on this planet anymore. I'm not going to take chemotherapy. I'm not going to take their drugs. Let me go peacefully. or the other. Like it's all about doing the wishes of the person who is dying. Not
so with that,
any of my will.
With that, I wanted to ask, because when does somebody call you and say, okay, I need help? Is it always people who know, okay, hey, I'm getting elder here. Maybe I'm in my 80s. I should start thinking about stuff a little bit seriously. Or, I mean, what happens? I mean, people just die out of just boom. It unexpectedly. So there's none of that. So when, I mean, do people in their 40s, should they start calling you and saying, okay, so where is that where people should contact you? Obviously, if you know you've got cancer and it's,
right.
you know,
So
pretty
terminal
much on your way,
diagnosis would be
thank you.
a good time to call me. Even if they are able to live for another 2 or 3 years, we can help arrange things so that things are kind of taken off, so that the worry platter that a lot of us carry around, all of the what ifs, are dealt with. And helping people leave a legacy if that's what they want to do. I talked to one woman and she said, what I want to do is I want to take all of my VHS tapes that I've done of the family over the years and make a video for each one of my kids.
Cool.
And I said, like, I got, cool. Actually, yeah, it's a cool idea. But I said, okay, how many VHS tapes have you got? And she said, oh my gosh, there must be 100. And I said, and how many hours are on each of those tapes? And she said, so conservatively, let's say there's 4 hours on each VHS tape.
Wow.
And I said, so 4 times 100 is 400 hours that you would have to sit and watch. And then you would have to have the technology that was able to cut and put everything together. And if you've only got 3 months to live, do you want to spend every waking moment on the VHS tapes? And she went, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. So I can get that practical and say, so you want to leave a legacy. So perhaps you can divide them up and give each of them some of the tapes. And now is there something else that we can work on? So we put together a photo album that had pictures, and then she wrote a letter. So that was something that she could do in a day. Do a photo album and a letter for each of her kids. So even to that point, like, people have sometimes grand plans on what they want to do. And I can say, maybe help them with that image and bring it into something practical that actually gets done. So all of that. And then if I, be there to hold their hand. Or if I'm not, if they've got family around, letting the family know what they could do. There's so many lovely rituals. There's an anointing ritual that at the very end of life, you can have them do the ritual where they actually are blessing the person. And it's absolutely gorgeous. And it's something that even the children can participate in. And it helps with the closure.
Oh, that's nice. Right. So is that part of it, that you're helping the family as well as the individual who's transitioning?
I absolutely can. I absolutely can. So when should you get in touch with me? If there's a terminal diagnosis, or you just want to be really prepared. And then, hopefully if someone says, well, I've got 3 months to live and they only live a couple of weeks, then you never know. Death is kind of sneaky that way.
I kind of feel like, we've lost a couple people, as you know, abruptly. People that you just would never, like healthy people that don't drink as much wine as Nancy and I. We're going, oh my God, you're the healthy people. You what? And we're all still reeling and still don't understand what happened. And I think it's very hard for friends and family on the other side if they still don't get it. There's no closure. It's very disturbing. You still go like, what, you know what I mean? So I feel like in a way that there's something about when you're ready to, when you're ready to rock, like if you have a family and kids, that you should start thinking about your life at that point. I know our follow-up conversation and next month will be about living your life, learning from a death doula. I did just say that, didn't I? I'm not supposed to. End of life doula, sorry.
No. Death doula is the other term for it. Death doula or end of life. You can use them interchangeably.
Well, you never know anymore. We're not allowed to say anything anymore, So
nothing's correct.
No, nothing's correct. But so going through all that, like, to me, in a way, I feel like, people, when you look at your will and you plan your life estate and everything, have someone, that can look at your end of life, because it kind of gets you straightened up a little bit. And even if you're going to live 20, 30 years, 40 years from there, at least you kind of have a situation there.
That plan.
And so many times I've heard people, they say, this is what mom wanted. And then you talk to mom and she goes, oh God, I hate that. So part of it is actually sitting down. And when I say it goes beyond a directive, so physically, where do you want to be? Do you want to be at home in your bed? Do you want to be in a hospital? Do you want to be in a hospice? Do you want to be propped up in a bed looking out over an ocean? Like, physically, where do you want to be? Spiritually, what do you want to have happen? Nancy, you had said, so we had kind of had that conversation before. What about the priest or the minister? Well, that's not me. I have my own beliefs that probably are weird for some, but making sure that whoever that person is has the spiritual comfort that they need. So if that means
you need,
have a rabbi or a priest or a nun or a shaman or a Buddhist, whatever.
Shaman, cool.
I want them all.
Shaman's cool.
I want to make sure, like, I have all my bets covered. Kind of joking, but
how many bets?
She wants clear passage, man. She's gonna have, that when you transition, you have to go to every single line. That means you have a bunch of toll roads.
But it really is so personal that
absolutely.
And the onus is on the person to think it through before it happens. It's really up to the person who is about to make that journey. It's not somebody else's responsibility to do everything. You can do all the things that have to happen mechanically, but you can't do what's inside of the person. That's up to them. And that's where they have to get ready.
Talk to someone and I said, so, like, we were going through all of this, and I said, so at the end, and she was what I would term a lapsed Catholic. She said, I want a minister to, and it's no longer called the last rites. It's escaping me right now, but it's prayers for the dead. I think and that's not the right term anyways, but you have a priest there. And I said, so who's going to call you priest? She said, oh, I haven't gone to church for a while. I don't have a priest I could call. I said, so maybe that's something that we should do. Find out who you could call and what that would entail. So even going down to that, and then, it's being the practical. People say 95% of people say that they want to die at home, and less than 25% do, because you have to make arrangements.
What happens because there's a cleanup crew. I mean, there's some real stuff that has to happen.
Real stuff that has to happen.
And I think this is okay. So let's go back to the family who thinks what their mom or dad or uncle wants, right? Whereas, everybody has a different relationship, but the person internally knows exactly what they want deep down, or hasn't thought about it and needs to think about it and needs someone to give the reality, like you're talking about.
That's what I'm finding.
Well, because nobody talks about it. Nobody wants to. Like, I talk to Nancy, I go, hey, well, we got to check this out on this and that. And she goes, and then she'll do it to me. I'm like, I don't want to think about you dying in a car crash or anything like that. I don't want, nobody wants that, because that invokes that little nagging fear thing. And fear is worse when things are not dealt with.
Well, but we're also taught that if you keep thinking about something, you almost push it to become true. And there's a lot of,
but you know what? You can't manifest not dying.
Yeah.
You're going to die. We're all going to die. That's a reality. There's two big events.
Here's what you manifest, having the beautiful death. And that's what I am all about, is let's people manifest the beautiful death, so that you are exactly where you want to be, that you are at the age that you want to be at, that you have the people surrounding you that you want to be surrounding you, and that pesky relative or person who thinks that they're a friend, maybe we can keep them outside of the room, and that could be something that I could do. So all of those things, let's manifest the perfect transition, so that you're going, holy crap, I see my favorite cousin or aunt or mom or dad or whatever, and I just get to walk over to them. Because that's the other thing I've heard from so many people. Like, one of my friends has attended she's a hospice nurse, so she's attended more than 200 deaths. And some of the some of the stuff that happens can't be explained. Absolutely can't be explained. And so someone that, everything from, there's a relationship that fractured 30 years before, and it was someone that they loved deeply, but something happened. They got separated by time, distance, and egos.
Oh, that's a big
And in that last week, all of a sudden they get the phone call from them and say, I've just been thinking of you so much. Like, all kinds of things that you can say, oh, well, isn't that a coincidence? But there's all kinds of little miracles that I think that happen to one of
I think we're all more connected than you. That synchronicity is there if we tap into it. And I think when we're passing, that path is happening, that we're more attuned to it, and we start thinking about things. It's like when you think about a friend and then they suddenly call you, you're like, that's weird. Well, you are obviously really thinking of them. I think we have that extra power and that sense, and we don't tap into it as much. And the more we stray away from thinking of our life course and give into notifications on our phones and dings and dongs and the little bings and bongs, I should say it that way, of notifications, that we get derailed. Hustle bustle is not a good thing. There's doing things with intent. You can be very busy, but intent on your work, and in between your work, be open. When you do things with intentions, other than succumb to the crazy doesn't work. I've done that. I've been there. And it doesn't work well for a Virgo. I get annoyed, and I'm pissy and annoying to everybody. So the intent has to be there. And I think that's what your work is doing, is it's still so connected to trust leadership. Yeah. Someone has to trust you with the end of life, whether they're like, I could come to you now and you say, okay, like, I got to look at this because it's bugging me. What's going to happen to me? Like, do I have to have this set up? What this is bugging me, maybe on a spiritual level. Is that something that people call you on? Hey, I don't know what I believe in, but am I going to go to hell? Like, do any of that? What happens? Oh,
like I haven't been doing it long enough. I bet that is now, thank you for bringing it up. I should prepare myself for that. I used to, it's interesting because here in Savannah, I find that religion is much more prevalent than it is up in Nova Scotia. Everybody talks about it. Yeah. And so I find it really interesting that I'm starting to, because I hear it all the time, I'm starting to understand where my beliefs are. So would I help someone get to that point? I think I'm good at listening. And by listening very deeply, I can ask questions that helps them come to the decision that is right for them. I will not make a decision for a person, but I will listen wholeheartedly and ask the questions that they will be able to say, oh, right, I know what I need to do. Because one of the things that I know is that we all have a deep wisdom that sometimes we're afraid to bring out. And that if someone just allows it, everyone has their own answers, especially when it comes to spirituality. Because, you know, like at the end of their life, I'm not going to say, okay, well, from what I'm hearing, you did this quiz and I think you're a Buddhist. So
there's a thing about confirmation. You might have your deep-seated beliefs that you don't realize because you don't think about them that often. And then when something happens, those beliefs come to the surface and you need confirmation from other people.
And that's what I think that we do. We ask the creative questions that allows people to come up with their own answers.
Yeah.
So you're like a life coach then, in a way.
But
an end of life coach. Yeah, it's like an end of life coach.
Absolutely.
But I just don't think people should wait for it though.
No, I don't think they should either. I think that
that's what I'm thinking.
Have it organized, but then it needs to be revised because what might be right for you now, Nancy, might not be right for you 5 years from now. And the same with you, Lisa.
Yeah.
What you want in this
She still wants rum and Coke.
Yeah.
It's a constant.
So we'll make sure the Coke is nice and cold, ice cubes, good rum.
Captain Morgan.
So that's all done.
Yeah, Captain Morgan's going with me.
Okay, we'll have a little. Yeah,
she likes pirates.
Yeah.
Well, we could give her a pirate send off.
Cool.
But I like the way you say that. It is like a party in a way, and some people may not want it. Maybe it's just I don't want anyone around me, and that's okay. Right?
It's like it really depends on your belief of the afterlife, what you think is going to happen next.
So in New Orleans, and you probably know this, like in New Orleans when we were there, and if you go, you have to tour the cemeteries because they are fabulous.
I know. I want to go. I want to go then and do that.
And the tour is really good. But as they're going to like the funerals down there, as they are walking to the cemetery, it's the dirge music. It's like, and it's very sad. And once the person has been delivered, then they have the party and they're dancing, and because they have moved to a better place.
It's a send-off.
Yeah, it's the big send-off. So depending on what your beliefs are spiritually, then I think it gives people comfort to know that at the end, they get to have the party that they wanted.
No, it's too like the Native Americans, they do a dance in different tribes, but they all, at the end of someone's life, and they start while the person is obviously critically ill and not expected to live. And they dance always in the circle because their beliefs are circular in that once you start here, you are going to end up there. You know, so it's, and so they dance in the circle to say you've done, trying to find the right word, you've done your deal here on earth. Now it's time to go and do it upstairs, somewhere else. You know, it's time to move on up and do whatever it is you're meant to do up there.
Yeah.
Whether or not,
and then there's this talks about breaking into the light. And that I find really interesting that you hear that theme come over and over again, that as you cross over, you break into light. Not into darkness, but into light. Which
and I like that's much better than being put in a box, and buried under the ground. To me, being put in a box and buried underground seems like
I don't want to be in a box. If I'm going to be buried, just bury me.
That seems like to me the worst possible thing. I also don't like the idea of being burned, just in case.
You're going to wake up. You'll stand up. Well, no, because there's a whole thing of people getting out of their coffins too. So.
But you know where the term dead ringer came from, right?
Well,
okay. So during the plague, they used to bury people, and there was some people had gone into a coma, and they weren't dead, and so they found, they wanted to make sure that if someone was buried but they woke up, they had actually a string attached to a bell above ground And if they woke up in
Oh
the
my
coffin,
gosh.
they could ring the bell. And so a dead ringer would say,
Oh,
yeah. So you
That
learn all these
makes
weird
me,
things.
that makes the song Ring My Bell like a whole
crazy.
other song now. That's
Wow.
insane. But I mean, they had to do what they had to do back then, right?
But
That's
now
some crazy
they
stuff.
you know, they make sure, but things are changing, you know, like there's a woman that I talked to last week up in Canada who's starting a green burial movement. And
Oh,
now
that's so cool.
because embalming puts so many bad chemicals into the earth.
You're right.
Yeah.
And in order to have a funeral home or a funeral parlor in Canada, I don't know if it's the same in the States, you have to have someone who is gone through the whole process. And part of that is you have to learn how to embalm. And we're saying, as part of the green movement, which I believe in, but I'll let people do what they want. Why do you need to try and make people look like they're not dead if they're dead? Just is weird to me. So
I know the makeup
go
and
the way of the
highlighting.
dinosaur.
Well,
That
did you
is,
hear about the? Oh, this is a whole. That would be a whole other show. There's some weird stories about embalming. I'll stop because there's some people who've been up, and they didn't have the money to keep doing it, and there was a bunch of bodies in the funeral home.
Yeah.
In a school bus, all propped up like Weekend at Bernie's.
Oh God.
See, but then if you had a death doula, you would follow up where the body went.
Absolutely. And make sure the arrangements were done. So everything from now, you know, so whatever someone wants. If someone wants a Viking funeral pyre, I do the research.
So she's a party planner now too.
Absolutely. I'd find out where you could do that. Or if they want a green burial, and now they have ones where you can actually have your ashes put in so that it helps a tree grow, you know, like you
right. I have a friend doing that. But doesn't this also alleviate the family going through a death of a loved one? And you know, families now, it used to be the families all in one space and in one village or community. Now families are all over the country and around the world, and they fly in. But now, like, oh my God, one person ends up tasked with everything. Yeah. And they probably are the one already taking care of Uncle Joe and Auntie Lou and kids. And they are just the caregivers of the family and dumped on and dumped on and dumped on and can barely even think and be human. And I want to give a big shout out to anybody caregiving for anybody. It is one of the hardest roles in the world.
Hard work.
You know? It is. And I think it's overlooked all the time about how hard it is. And families feud over caregiving of their loved ones. Yeah. I mean, there's big divisions. Well, I pay. Well, you do the work. Well, it gets nasty. And
I don't get involved in that.
No. But I think when someone is there to help the person transition, that helps alleviate the drama. Yeah. That nobody wants around. And the person exiting is like, come on, wish me good, you know, send me on my way. Rusted Root, great song, send me on my way. I wish I could reach out and hold your hand, but I can't because I'm transitioning. You know, that's not the exact words, but it is that song, and send me on my way. That should be what we should make a playlist.
It's not all
This is cool.
Love and romances, wine and roses when someone's passing too. A lot of times it brings up a lot of emotion in the family. Sometimes the person who is passing has been a complete a-hole. And so how do you know, like there's so much to do. So part of it is like, as a doula, being very present and giving them peace and the family, and kind of accepting everybody where they are, maybe stopping the family. Like I haven't had to do this. I've talked to friends who have been working as doulas for a lot longer than I have. And they said they've had to stop big fights just before they became fist fights in the room with the person dying.
Wow.
So, you know, like it's kind of interesting. I kind of went, well, that's kind of scary. I don't know if I'm prepared for that, but you're trained. I'm trained that I hope the training comes through if I ever got into that situation. If not, then, you know, I'll have a phone with a quick dial.
Wow.
But I think that's it is because it's emotional, and family drama is family drama. It runs deep. And so I think that's, you know, again, somebody else that's neutral. It's like when you have a debate. We watched a movie last night with Robert De Niro, and I don't know what it was called, but it was about the grandkid and the grandfather having a war over bedrooms. In Robert De Niro, Cheech Marin, and what's his name from, oh, come on, I can't not remember his name. Oh, Jane Seymour's in it. And from Back to the Future, Christopher Walken.
Oh, okay.
And so it was like the old dudes getting together about the younger kids, you know, the young sixth graders, the guy, you know, it was great. It's just a fun, silly movie. And, you know, it was just like when you watch that and you started seeing everybody's life parts of being good and bad, that was a good part of it. But they had a war over bedrooms, the grandfather and the grandson. And he said, well, I was fought in the war. And if you're going to fight in a war, you're going to have rules. And these are the rules. And they had to both sign the rules. Then they had a peace treaty. Did they keep their peace treaty in the end? Well, no. Anyway, it's a fun little movie. But he did talk about that. It's like there's times to stop. There's times for peace deals. There's times for stopping the war. And I think, you know, it's interesting. And then they had a peace negotiation. And the little granddaughter said she would be the one to hold the meeting because he gave her a cookie. I mean, come on, this is just a fun movie. But I thought this was actually, it goes well with what you're saying, in that she was neutral. She is not part of the war. I am neutral. I'm making sure it's like a debate, the presidential debates. You have the person hosting the debate. Don't talk to me about the media and all of that, because that's not what I mean. But you have a neutral person, and that's what you are in this process. Or process, that you are the neutral person. You don't need to get into every dirty detail of a family drama. You go with, this is what I'm hired to do, and that's that. So let's stick to
it. People are on high emotional level when somebody passes, whether they hated the person or loved the person or didn't realize what the person meant to them till it was too late. I mean, I went to a funeral once where this lady tried to get in the grave with the person who had died and was starting to climb into the grave at the funeral site. And it was so shocking that someone would do that, that you realize that that person hadn't had the time or whatever was needed to assimilate or fix the feelings or come to grips with what was happening. So you know, and so I think what you do has a value in helping people. It's not only transitioning, the transition for the person leaving, it is also helping the people about that are connected to the person leaving, so that they can also handle it.
I do think that, you know, Lisa, you had talked about earlier that the work that I did in emotional intelligence and trust, and it's so, I really feel that helps with some of the work that I'm doing as a doula, because as you said, Nancy, people need to be able to sit with really intense emotions. And if they're not able to, then they don't have that closure. And you have that situation where because she hadn't had someone help her deal with that very intense emotion, she was to that point where she wanted to crawl in, you know? So all of those things. We talked about the next show where, you know, some of the work that I do, people can do for themselves. We get to do that again at the next show. But, you know, I want people to understand how important it is to just start thinking about what is it that you want. And for a lot of us, for most of us, we get to live. And so what does it look like to live your best life before you have to plan for your best life?
Exactly. I think it's important to think of. That's what I was thinking this whole thing. I'm like, yeah, I mean, and a lot of us just don't want to think of it. We don't. But that's not fair to our kids. It's not fair to our spouses. It's not fair to our family, our friends, our colleagues to do that. So it's a good thing to think about. And honestly, I mean, there's such good things out there too to read about, like people that have crossed over and come back. It's crazy cool stuff. So that's a rabbit hole. I encourage people, if you're worried about it, get into people that have gone through the other side and come back. I don't know if it's all true, but it's fun. It's fun because it sounds like a good time on the other side. I'm just saying, everybody didn't even want to come back, but apparently we're told you're coming back.
Yeah. And
I don't know if it's true
that
or not.
There is someone who wants to hold your hand at the end of life. I'm living in a property where there is one person, and I can't imagine that there's at this point anyone who wants to hold her hand. And I think that's so sad because
why
all of us, I don't know anyone who goes, yeah, when I leave, I want to be by myself. I want to be in a closet and they don't find my, blah. I think there's that whole thing that we want to know that we've made a difference, that we left with love, or at least that's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And what is it that you want people to say about you?
Mm-hmm. I think it's especially important for those who are incarcerated, that they have that help too. I know that the clergy gets involved with that, but I think, there's so many people that are imprisoned for such long terms and they didn't mean to do what they did. And there's obviously some people that are complete villains and really bad. And then there's a weird reason that makes them do that stuff. There's a mental health. When you think about crime, there's a lot of times there's a reason. You can't help if you're born a psychopath, right? So I feel like even though they can do so many horrendous things and kill people and do these horrendous things, they didn't ask to be born that way. And so somewhere we have to have some little ounce of compassion somewhere. It's very difficult because they do such cruel and brutal things. And Nancy, her brother was murdered. And how do we have compassion for the person that murdered him? It's very difficult to cross. She's like, nope, it's very difficult.
No.
But he didn't get up, and he wasn't born saying, I want to be that way. So what do you do? What do you do as that person, as a family? And we have the death penalty in this country in certain states. So at that same point, like there is a lot of mixed, weird stuff, emotional stuff when it comes to death and passing and how you pass. Do you want someone to burn in hell, really?
Yeah.
And maybe so. That's up to everybody's way of belief,
Yeah. When you say people come back, I would like to know or believe that people who do things like the man who murdered my brother for no reason at all doesn't get to come back ever. Done.
So she's like, that's it. It's over.
Well, they're cleaning up the gene pool, as you might.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, don't let that violence come back.
Yeah. That's exactly there, because there's something wrong.
There's something wrong, but don't let it come back.
Yeah. That person, maybe if he had a different upbringing or different chemical makeup, wouldn't have done that. So, I don't know. Yeah. Something makes people do crime. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be put away, because people do need to be away from people if they're going to cause harm. I'm just saying there's something there. And when they go, and it affects people, everything like that affects
people. That's why the law has, there's a difference between if you harm someone, murder someone out of an instant fury and the emotions got the best of you, there's a lesser term in prison or whatever happens to you.
Premeditated or
as someone who planned it out. When somebody plans it out, the term of imprisonment is way longer for a good reason.
But then I go, there's something weird. What made them still be like that? There's something chemically wrong.
Yeah.
I think so. So do you deal with that kind of thing with
No.
With maybe the families, well, on the victim side.
No, I don't. Honestly, I don't. I think that's I think that is so far out of what I would come into contact with. And I can decide who I want to take as a client.
Yeah.
I don't feel that I would be the best qualified person to deal with that. So I won't be dealing with that because I don't feel like I'm qualified. As I think you need really deep psychological knowledge in order to deal with something like that.
Okay.
And I think I have brushed the treetops of psychology, but I'm not a psychologist. I've taken a lot of courses. I've taken emotional intelligence courses. I've taken lots of trust courses and yada, 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 and everything from emotional CPR and on from there, but certainly not qualified to deal with anyone who is that psychologically damaged. But
we're go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I know we don't have a lot of time, I just wanted to dedicate this. My cousin, who I grew up with, passed 2 nights ago from Lou Gehrig's. And Susan Bales was a beautiful woman who had 6 sisters and a brother and a beautiful close family. And I know that at the end, she was surrounded with love and had all of the things that I think are really important. So this is just perfect timing for me to talk about this because at the end of her life, I know that the legacy that she left with her children and with her husband and with her brother and her sisters was one of love and what a legacy.
Nice.
That's awesome. Can we dedicate it to Tina Turner too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We got to give a shout out to Tina Turner.
Left such a beautiful legacy. Absolutely.
One of that, I thought of you when she passed. I thought, because we talked about legacy professionally and personally in the last couple of episodes. I was like, what a legacy. You can't beat that legacy. You know, I mean, that's and it's not about competition and legacy, right? But I'm just going like, that was a legacy. And Tina will be with us forever, and I think that's that thing. But last question real quick, because we did go the gamut, right? On passing, but I wanted to ask this one thing. So there's a lot of death in life, obviously, and families that are not prepared when stuff happens and someone, passes abruptly for all kinds of reasons, natural to suicide to bad things. Do you help families like that when they're trying, like suddenly someone dies, no one's prepared, somebody may be younger, could be a kid all the way till midlife we're not prepared. Would you help them get it together, basically?
I would refer them to somebody else. I would refer them to a grief counselor because as a death doula, I help the transition. But a lot of the work that you're talking about would be a really experienced grief counselor or a psychologist who is used to dealing with those issues.
Okay. So you're directly with the person. Okay.
Yeah.
I had to clear all bases here, get to all of it.
Good job.
Thank you so much. Lee, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Everyone, Lee's website for this is souljourneydoula.com. Also for the Trust Architect, go to thetrustarchitect.biz. All the links are in the show notes, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening. And of course, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Lee is here every third Thursday. Thank you so much, Lee.
Thanks,
Thank
Lee.
you. Bye, Nancy. Good to see you again.
Bye. Thank you. Good to see you.